Good. Male, female, non-binary pals. This is SMI. We're going to do this story. This is Draco Malfoy, ex-male higher-up wizard, ex-Weasley, ex-kid of the wizard world reader. Let's go. Prologue chapter, when they first met. Totally John Weasley, Provo. I was a third year. I was in my trade card, and one of the first years was crying that one of the new first years would bully him, and he needed help from another member of Hogwarts. I smiled and got up and asked him to show me where the bully is. He showed me the one and it was a Malfoy. I looked at him and I smiled and looked at him. Hogwarts does not like bullies, I spoke. And you are? Said Malfoy. I'm Tori John Weasley, third year and student of Dumbledore. I spoke. Oh, so soon to be higher up, said Malfoy. Look, what's your name? I spoke. I'm Draco Malfoy, said Draco. Okay, well, Draco Malfoy, just stop, I spoke. Fine, said Draco. I smiled and got back to my cart, and I grabbed the boy that got bullied and sat him on my chair, next to me. Thank you for saving me, said the boy. You are very welcome, I spoke. I am Johnny Lawrence, said Tony John Weasley, I spoke. So do you know how Dumbledore would act, said Johnny. Don't worry, I spoke. So let me go, said Johnny. Do you want to get bullied again? I spoke. No, said Johnny. Just stay here, I spoke. Okay, said Johnny. The train stopped and I showed him to the boats. They called my flying bird and they came. I smiled and got on my bird and it flew to Hogwarts. I smiled and got there and before the boats because Dumbledore wanted me to be there early. I smiled and Dumbledore was there, and I smiled and got off my bird, and I smiled and hugged him. Nice to see you, my student, said Dumbledore. Nice to see you as well, Master. I spoke. So let us see if you can still tackle Snape in the shadows, said Dumbledore. I smiled and went into the shadow and went into the shadow of Snape and tackled him, and he yelled at Dumbledore and not me. Why you, Dumbledore? Said Snape. You can get off with me, Weasley, said Snape. Yes, sir, I spoke. Get off of him. I smiled and helped him up, and he rubbed my head. I smiled and bowed to him. You did good, Sunshine, said Snape. I smiled and bowed and went back in the shadows and headed back to Dumbledore. I smiled, tackled him, and he laughed and picked me up and got up. Was I that light for him? I thought. He smiled at my shocked face. I smiled and he carried me to the dining area and put me in my seat in my house, and he smiled and patted my head. I smiled, looked at McGonagall, and she smiled and patted my head. I smiled and looked up at the door, and she left and knew the first years were here. I smiled, looked at my wand and on the table, and now looked at what I can do. I smiled, bowed my head to my wand, and it went into my hand. I smiled and looked at Dumbledore, and he smiled and looked at the wand in my hand. He smiled, and I used my brain to put the wand in my hand. I smiled, and the students stood in the front, and the hat were throwing them into the place that Johnny was put into my house, and the kids were also put into my house as well. They sat in my house seats, and I smiled and bowed to them, and they smiled and bowed as well. I had looked at Draco Malfoy, and he was put into the Slytherin house. I smiled and looked at my brother Ron, and he was put into the Gryffindor house. I smiled and bowed to him, and he bowed back. We had started to have a party for the new kids of Hogwarts. So I wanted to show my members how to use the wand to make food for them, and it was a good thing there for them. They had done a very good job. We had eaten, and then it was time to head to our Hogwarts house, and we all fell asleep. They were all sleeping. I had gone to the main room and looked outside and saw my owl. I called him, and he came and perched on my shoulder. I smiled and saw my mom had given me a present for my 3rd year of Hogwarts. I smiled and opened the present. It was a new hat from the hat shop I had liked, and I put it on, and I went to see Dumbledore to show him my present of being a 3rd year. I knocked on his door, and he said, "Come in." I walked in, and he smiled, and I smiled as well, and stood at his desk like a good student. "So your owl brought your present from your mom and dad," said Dumbledore, smiling. "Yes, she got me a new hat, and it was from the hat place. She told me it would be a good place to get a hat." I spoke. "That is good," said Dumbledore. "Well, I have to go," I spoke. "Well, Tori, I have a present for you," said Dumbledore. He gave me a box, and I opened it. It was new robes for the 3rd year. I smiled and hugged him. "Thank you, sir," I spoke. "You are very welcome, Tori," said Dumbledore. I smiled and carried the box to my Hogwarts house, and then went into my room and tried on the robes. And I smiled, and it fits perfectly. And I took it off and put it on the mannequin, and then I had gone to bed. I smiled and looked at the stars from my window on the ceiling, and I fell asleep. Today was somewhat of a good day, I thought. Okay, guys, that's Stories Bro. Next is going to be Draco's Pro. I hope you guys enjoy.